Awesome. Good morning, everybody. I'm hoping everyone can hear me loud and clear. I can see everyone's got their microphones off, some familiar faces, some new faces as well I'm seeing. This is good. So at the moment we've got, let's have a look, we've got 100 people on our call today. I can only see about 12 of you. And I always say, I like to see your faces. You all look wonderful. I love the fact that Jeffrey's sitting there looking like he's in the Bahamas. I'm assuming that's a virtual background, my friend. Yeah. For those of you that joined us on Monday, what we did is we just kind of laid some foundation around negotiation skills in what we call, or what I refer to as kind of fundamentals of 101. And what we give is a lot of the theory and frameworks that are provided and built by the Harvard program on negotiation. So my screen, and I'm going to share with you all what I can see here in terms of my slide share. Okay, so I'm assuming you can all see my slides right now. So I'm just looking at Ben Edwards. If I can just get a thumbs up if that's happening to ask questions. But I mean, feel free to post them in during the session. I've got my colleague Ben with me, what we call producing the session. So he'll be keeping a track of any records or questions that come up. Okay. And finally, once again, let's get those videos on. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is exactly roll you into one of these polls. And already, because it's live, we've got a couple of a couple of answers already. So the first thing is what factors are you experiencing right now that is making negotiating tough? So remember, the label of our session today is negotiating in tough times. So if you could please all go to pollev.com/IgniteTrain999. The URL is at the top of that screen. And give us some input so I can actually see some of the situations that you face. More importantly, and I'll use this word carefully, that you perceive you are facing. Okay. Okay, so I've got a few coming in here. Manager isn't listening. Is that just because of these tough times, or is that a normal thing? Too accommodating to others. Okay, all right, yeah, I understand that. Tough people, interesting. Tough financial situation, yes it is. Current situation. So whoever's put current situation, yes, within this current situation, what are the factors that's making it difficult? Okay, it's mainly the fact that we cannot meet in person our clients. Okay, you can still get really good work done over the phone, over emails, and through video conferences as well. You know, we have clients in about 18 different countries that we work with, and most of that is done over Zoom, and we can still make sales, we can still negotiate, we can still connect and build relationships. So once again, even if you use this time to help shift your mindset around how we work. Uncertainty, 100%. Inability to see the body language. Okay, yeah, that does play into it greatly. Manager isn't listening as a normal thing. Thanks for the adjustment on that. Difficult budget discussions. Look, once again, difficult budget discussions is probably something that always happens. All right. So whether within an hour I can give you enough to deal with that or be confident dealing with that, I don't know. But look, shameless plug, but we do run bigger sessions than this if you want to learn more, and we can get into it. Timeline. Okay. So timeline uncertainty due to COVID. Yes, I 100% understand that. Timelines are an important thing in negotiations anyway. There is always a deadline, and we'll talk about, if we have time, why it's important to share your deadlines and not to keep them hidden, because that's quite a old school way of negotiating. I'm not going to tell them what I'm doing because I feel like I'm giving something away. Not controlling emotions. Clients are afraid and aren't really reverting at all times, making it hard to negotiate. Yep, 100%. Once again, because you can't get in front of people around the table, people can say, I'll call you back on that, let me get back, and it's easier for them to kind of whittle away. Payment issues, yeah. Welcome to our world. Someone not giving a shit. Okay, that's a good one. Okay, and is that someone, you or the other party? So look, you can see there's loads of things here that we're experiencing. Some of them I would challenge to be perceptions. I think some of them is our view of the current situation. I think we can get a handle on those and spin some of those around. Now, competition is just one that's just come in there. That's quite an interesting one because there is a huge amount. If I just look at our industry, look at what we're doing right now. 6 weeks ago, this isn't something we ever done before, where we're just running sessions for free, right? But the interesting thing about it is, I think a lot of the companies that we would call our competitors are doing some things like this, but I don't see anyone doing as much as we are, or as much as I perceive they could be doing. Now, what that means is that, yeah, from a commercial point of view, it doesn't help move us forward, but actually it's actually a lot of fun, and we're making some good connections. And once again, I keep seeing the same people coming back in the last 4, 5, 6 episodes that we've done, so we must be doing something right. But yeah, so thinking about what you can do now in terms of your competition, particularly, I mean, look, when you're in negotiations, competition is always going to be there. So look, that's great. There's a huge amount of issues that we're facing. Now, what I'd like to do today is I referenced the Harvard program on negotiation. And by the way, you Google that term, you can go and you can read about it. You can sign up to their mailing list. They do a negotiation minute mailer every week, and there's some really good stuff, some really good case studies in there as well. The other guide book group that I always highly recommend, because I think for me it was a game changer when this came out, is this guy here. His name's Chris Voss. I referenced him on Monday. Chris Voss was the lead international hostage negotiator for the FBI. And he's now moved into a civilian life. He set up a company called the Black Swan Group, and he teaches business people negotiation, that essentially tactics that the FBI use to save lives. His whole concept is the name of his book there, which is Never Split the Difference. I really recommend getting hold of a copy of that if you've got any interest in negotiation. Each chapter is laced with real life cases, which really helps lift it off the page, add some drama. But then what he does do, because you can sit there and go, yeah, I understand why that would work with a terrorist on a plane with a gun, but why would that work with someone that I'm trying to get a better payment terms from? But he'll then also give you links to your corporate world, you know, if that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is a couple of the concepts I'm going to cover today, which are his. I will 100% recommend his work and recommend getting hold of his book. So I just wanted to take a moment to attribute his work to a couple of things that we're going to talk about today. Okay. So with that being said, the first tactic that I'm going to get into of his, and by the way, there's far too much for me to get into within an hour, is the tactic that he refers to as mirroring. Okay. And mirroring is something that you may be familiar with in terms of when you talk about body language, mirroring and matching someone's body language, but it's not quite the same as that. Okay. In the most simplistic terms, if we think about what we're trying to achieve in a negotiation, if you were here on Monday, you'll know this. If not, I'll give this to you again. When you're negotiating with someone, what you need to focus on is their interests, not their position. So if someone says, this is my bottom line price, or these are my terms, or this is what we can give you, and that's it, that's a position. That's the kind of the stake they're putting in the ground. What we need to focus on is what's underneath that. And we use the iceberg analogy from a psychological point of view to say, what is driving that behavior? What's driving that position? And underneath that is interests. Some of them will be known to those people. Some of them will be unknown to those people. And our job is to uncover those. Because when we can speak to their needs, not their positions, we're in a much better position to get a more favorable deal for ourselves and help move them towards us. So the first thing that I'm going to give you today, which is one of Chris Voss's tactics used by the FBI, is this concept of mirroring. And what mirroring does, it actually, when you're listening to someone talk, when they say something to you, it's simple as you repeat the last 3 words of their sentence back to them, okay? Or the 3 critical words. That are the terms he uses, are the last 3 words or 3 critical words. And you repeat that back to them, okay? So if someone says to you, I need better payment terms, okay, one way of doing that is by saying, okay, so what's going to work for you? What do you mean by that? Now, interesting enough, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the neuroscience. That creates a fear response. Actually, there's research that shows that it triggers the amygdala, which is the part of your brain which is responsible for fear reactions. But if you actually use a mirroring technique, so someone says, you know, I need better payment terms, and you turn around and you say, and those last 3 words, better payment terms, and you notice very subtly there's an upward inflection in my voice at the end, and what that does, it creates the sense of a question. okay? So better payment terms. And automatically, my next thing is to just shut up, okay? So when I say that, what is gonna happen is, without a shadow of a doubt, that person will then reframe or rephrase their requirement. Or what is most likely to happen is they're gonna give you a bit more information about why, okay? Well, you know, I've got pressures from my manager. Ah, okay, right, now we're starting to learn a little bit more. Pressures from your manager. Okay, so I get pressures from my manager to get better payment. Okay, pressures from your manager. Yeah, okay, and then what you'll do is you're just going to use that tactic to keep drawing out from them. Now, because you're not asking them questions by what do you mean, I don't understand, you're not making yourself look, you know, weak, or you're making yourself look stupid, which is something that a lot of people worry about, but also you're not triggering their fear reactions, okay? So it's really important that when you think about mirroring, how you do that. Now, there's two ways that you can use your voice. One is like I was doing at the end, with an upward inflection to make it sound like a question. Or if I'm kind of just going to confirm something back to that person, I'm going to use a downward inflection. Okay, so you get pressure from your manager. Okay, and then usually what I'm going to get from that is a confirmation, a yes. Okay, now what we're looking to do here is build this as a little journey, as a pathway. So I'm not going in there, slamming my fist on the table and saying, I need 30-day payment terms, or whatever the critical piece of my negotiation objectives are. What I'm going in is, I'm literally going in to learn as much as I can about what's driving that person's position. So mirroring is a really, really simple technique, which is extremely powerful. In his book, Chris Voss refers to it as like a Jedi mind trick. So if there's any Star Wars fans out there, I'm sure we will understand what that means, right? So the mirroring technique gets you results that you will not believe. Now, here's one thing I'll tell you. If you don't do this, or you're going to do it consciously for the first time, if you've got someone that you're living with, try it with them today, okay? So if they say, you know, oh, I need you to do the washing up. Okay, me to do the washing up? Just see what happens. But when you use these for the first time, it will feel awkward. Okay, it will feel strange. And those of you that have ever gone through any communication training and you're given the technique or a tool or a framework to use, could be a feedback model, a coaching tool, the first time you use it, it feels awkward, it feels forced, it feels contrived. But I promise you that other person won't even notice it. And the more you use it, the more natural it will become, and it will just become part of your negotiation toolkit, become part of your communication toolkit. And it's not something, you know, to use all the time. It's just when the situation requires you to learn more about that other person. Okay, so the first thing is mirroring. Okay, and once again, it's not about matching their body posture. It's about repeating back the last three words, or the three critical words from the sentence they gave you. Okay, so here's a couple of kind of ways of doing this. Like I said, repeat the last or critical three words. And what I said before, there's an upward inflection or inflection. I apologize. Inflection creates a question. A downward inflection creates a statement. Things to avoid, or the opposite side, or things that are going to get you a result that you don't want, is, for example, by asking that question, what do you mean? What we're going to get to that is a sense of defensiveness, and can lead to frustration on the other side's part, because I feel, what is this person stupid? Am I not making sense? So, you know, if you say, what do you mean by that? They might just repeat the same thing. So just think about the difference. It's a very subtle difference, but a very powerful one. Here's something I would like you to do, and be conscious of this. When you explain something to someone, and you can't trigger this, you'll just have to be mindful and aware that it's happening. If you tell someone something and they turn around to you and say, what do you mean? Or what do you mean by that? Or something of that ilk, immediately, if you can, gauge your reaction. I mean, your emotional response. You will feel a little bit tense. It creates a defense mechanism in you, okay? So you're going to have to wait for someone to do that for you. What you can do proactively and practice this is the first thing, okay? So repeat back those last three words. So once again, in his book, he talks about how that used in hostage negotiation, but he also gives a really good example. And let's speak to the one where the manager's not listening, in that we just had in a poll, where someone who attended one of his courses used this on her manager. I'll give you the story. In his book, he talks about that this manager was famous for what they referred to as drive-bys. He would just come into your office and dump stuff on you. So, and would kind of not take any pushback or resistance. So he came in and just stuck his head in this woman's door and said, oh, we're going to need 2 copies of all the documents for this client. And she said, I'm sorry, 2 copies? So she's apologizing, basically saying, all right, just forgive me because I don't understand for a minute. She's used the mirroring piece with the upward inflection. And he's gone, yeah, I like to have 2 copies, 1 for the client, 1 for us. Okay, she goes, and then she goes, sorry, one for the client, because this isn't standard practice. And he goes, yeah, he goes, well, I need one. And she said, okay, so does the client need one as well? And he said, oh, I'll find out. And he goes, and then she says, okay, and where would you like me to store them? And he says, store them, because, yeah, where would you like me to store them? Because the file room's full. Oh, you can store them anywhere. Store them anywhere? And he goes, oh, okay, just put them in my office. Anyway, as it comes back, he came back to her 2 hours later, said, actually, don't worry, digital copies will be fine. And what she did is she pushed back and challenged very carefully, simply by repeating back to him the last 3 or the critical 3 words with an upward inflection, making it seem inquisitive, okay? And then once again, shutting up without the feeling of need to fill that silence, particularly if you're doing it for the first few times and it does feel a bit awkward, you might feel the need to step into that, okay? So look, here's something I'm going to ask you to go to Polev, because this will take us into our next piece, okay? Which is talking about empathy, but it links back. On your Polev, you've got 2 statements there. They are very similar, but what I would like you to do is just click on the one that you think is the more powerful empathy statement. So the first one is, it seems like you're worried the product won't deliver everything you need. And on the right-hand side, it says, I'm hearing that you're worried the product won't deliver everything you need it to. Which of those 2 statements do you believe to be the more powerful empathetic statement? And once again, the URL is at the top. And we'll just wait for some clicks on that.
I'm still getting the same old question. Yeah, now it's moving.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, here we go. Awesome. Okay, good. All right, good. I just get a few more seconds, because like I said, we've got 100 people on the call. As far as I'm aware, there's quite a few people also watching on YouTube that we're streaming. Okay, so once again, I think we've got 30, 40 people on YouTube and maybe on Facebook Live as well. You feel free to join in these polls. You can just go on any device and put that URL in, polev.com/IgniteTrain999. Okay, so if we just look at the ratios, it's kind of 3 to 1 roughly in favor of the statement on the right-hand side. Just see if there's any more that are going to come in. No? Okay, so what would be interesting, if anyone's willing to, is anyone that's clicked the one that's getting the most votes, for example. So we're up at 29 votes for the one on the right. Would anyone mind just opening up your microphone and telling me, why do you think that's the more powerful statement?
I can do it if you like. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yeah, please, Laura.
So I'm hearing that you're worried. You're referring to my sense of hearing. Especially if I'm an auditory person, it tells me you're really listening to me.
Okay.
And it talks, because it's a sense, a physical sense, I feel you're really listening. That's my feeling.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you very much for that. And I think you might have just won yourself a few voters for that one. I've only got 10 people that have chosen the statement in the green box, 11 now. Someone's just disagreed with you, Laura. Could you tell me, someone, if you could open up your microphone, why do you feel that's the more powerful empathy statement? There's only 9 people now. I think maybe you have got people flocking to your cause, Laura. 8.
It seems like
yes,
it's
please.
us feeling with the client, or
okay.
feeling with the person whom we are discussing with.
Okay. All right. Okay. Interesting. So look, we've got, I mean, obviously there's a big shift towards the blue box here with 34 people and some people even bailing from the green box. There's a little clue on this slide as well. If you look at the kind of tags that are appearing in the blue box, you'll notice they've got a cross in it, and the ones on the other side haven't got a tick in it. So Laura, we can talk about this by all means, but I'll just kind of give you the statement as to why. So the one on the left is actually the more powerful empathy statement. And I'll tell you for why. Actually, if someone wants to answer this question, what is empathy about? What are you trying to do when you empathize? True empathy. What are you trying to do?
Simply putting yourself in somebody else's shoes.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So that's, you know, a nice simplistic way of explaining it. You know, empathy, the word, you know, the letters at the beginning, EM, refer to emotion. So it's emotionally connecting with how that person's feeling. Okay. The subtle difference between these two statements, and one on the left is what the ones we want you to use, is because on the right hand side, you're putting yourself in it. Okay. So I'm hearing is about your perception of the situation. And what you might find is that whether it's conscious or subconscious, people can react adversely to that because it's not about them anymore, it's about you. And it sounds really strange, but by using the I statement, what you're doing is you're putting yourself into that situation. On the other side, you've got something like it seems, or it sounds like you're worried about this. It gives you two things. One, it's making it all about the other person. And what you're doing is you're telling them what you're receiving from them. The other thing is, if they turn around to you and go, no, you haven't committed to saying I'm hearing, or I think, or I'm getting that sense for you. You can back out of it. Hey, I didn't say this is what it was. I just said that's how it was coming across. So when we look at those two statements specifically, or particularly in the negotiation factor, and usually when we talk about empathy anyway, the use of the word I shifts the balance or the focus of the conversation onto you as the speaker of that statement. So if we can remove that and just say, it seems like, what you're doing is you're replaying back that person's emotion to them. So once again, this is one of Chris Voss's tactics, and he calls this labeling. Okay. So what they do is they mirror to get information. They understand and start understanding the emotion that's behind that and what's driving it. And then they label that. Okay. So it's not just a question of stating their issue or stating their pain point. It's giving it a label. Okay. And because we're doing that in a way where we're saying, I see this, or this is how I perceive it, what we're going to do is we're going to get them to go, yeah, well, that is what's happening. Or they're going to say, no, it's not so much that. And once again, you're going to drive a deeper level of conversation from them. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. And thank you for engaging. Traditionally, when you talk about, say, I'm hearing you, it's auditory, you could simply change the other sentence to say, it sounds like. But what I'm going to ask you to avoid doing is putting yourself into that statement. Okay. It's about the other person. Okay, hope that makes sense. So what we're going to do is going to talk to you about how that then leads on to creating something called tactical empathy. Okay, so tactics is obviously something that you're going to use and do to move the conversation forward. So this is what we do. There's kind of 4 stages to this. The first thing we do is we're going to empathize with that person. And we've just given you some ways of doing that in terms of kind of speaking to their emotion, but without putting yourself in the middle of it. After we do that, what we're then going to start to do is learn about their interests. So no longer are we talking about us and our position, and we're focusing on their price point or their delivery date or the terms that they want in the deal. We're understanding what's driving that. The next step in our journey is we then get to understand why they see the world that they do. Okay, rightly or wrongly, their perception is their reality. So if we can then get to this stage where we can understand, we don't have to agree with it. And this, sorry, I meant to say this because this is a critical part. Empathy is not about agreeing with that person. Okay. There's, you know, you could take something as extreme. You could sit down with some, you know, even an ISIS member, and you can have a conversation with them. And even it might go against everything in your body, you may be able to, or you should be able to empathize with them. It doesn't mean you have to agree anything at all with them, but you should be able to create an empathy to understand how they see from their worldview. Okay, doesn't mean they're right. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it. Okay. The last thing that then leads us to is tactics, and really what we're talking about tactics is, right, now I've created a connection. Now I understand what's driving their behavior and their needs. Now I understand their worldview and their perception of it. What can I now do and offer in order to start moving them forward or moving them towards my position? What can I offer? And we'll talk about this in a moment, as a trade or a concession that's going to speak to their interest, not their position, about their interest, because I might have some things in my negotiation bag that I can use that they haven't asked for, but I know is going to drive towards their interests. So tactical empathy is using empathy to move your conversation forward. It's an active, a proactive use of empathy to move your negotiation forward. Okay. So here's the interesting piece. University of California did a study. I love neuroscience. Neuroscience is a fascinating topic to me because of my makeup as well. I also love the fact that a lot of stuff that happens in neuroscience happens by accident. Neuroscientists won't like me for saying that, but there's so many really cool theories that have come out and been proven because something has happened accidentally while someone was wired up to a machine or in a brain scanner. And if you want a great example of that for another read, something called mirror neurons. Nothing to do with the mirroring we were talking about earlier, mirror neurons and how they were discovered. That's a really cool concept. So look, if you're not too sure, I've labeled this, it's not quite right, okay, but I've just tried to make this easy for everyone to see. What I've highlighted there in red is a part of your brain called the amygdala. It is part of what was often referred to as your lizard brain, right? So it's a part of your brain that controls fear responses. So when you get scared of something, if you've just watched a horror movie and a scary clown jumped out, oh, that triggered your amygdala, okay? Now, interesting enough, when people in this experiment were shown faces showing extreme emotions, particularly aggressive ones, they were able to register people in their scans where their amygdala was firing, okay? So the immediate reaction that we have is one of fear, okay? As crazy as this is, even in negotiation, someone says to you, I can't get you that price. Bing, 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 our amygdala goes off. What you've got to be aware of, that's nothing you can control. That is, like I said, lizard brain stuff. This is 1,000 generations of evolution, whether your belief system is, but 1,000 generations, maybe 2,000 generations have kept that part of your brain, right? It's part of the reason we're still here. But here's the interesting thing. When they were shown those pictures and they could measure activity in the amygdala, when they were asked to label those emotions, it moved into this part of the brain, which is referred to as the neocortex. And the neocortex, as you can see, is kind of the more later developed part of the human brain, should we say. And one of its responsibilities is rational thought, okay? So the first thing you've got to remember is that when you're involved in a negotiation, one of the first things that's going to happen when you get pushed back or challenged on something is you will have a fear reaction. Now, your job in that moment is to realize that I know that's going to happen. I've got to embrace it and be mindful, okay? So take a breath, think about your heart rate, just slow down because you will have a reaction and that will physically manifest itself in you as well. The next thing then to do is to rationalize that, okay? So if I'm talking to someone, I've created an empathy statement with them, I've understood their point of view, they've given me a point of view that I fundamentally disagree with, or I know that I can't even deliver because I don't have the authority or my business doesn't even do that. All of a sudden, that is that fear. I can't do this deal, I'm not going to be able to get it done. The next thing is then to just, once again, take control of yourself, a couple of deep breaths, and then start getting rational with it. And one of the easiest ways to do it is to say, okay, so what can I do to move this forward? And you could even put that to the next person, okay? So one of the best ways of doing that, once again, is to, if someone asks you for something and they say, look, I need, this price, and, something that's very common in our world is we can only offer you 90-day payment terms, Your response to that is then an open question, which makes your problem their problem. And that question is simple as, how am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to do that? And you're not doing it, you're not going to say it to them in a way that makes them sound stupid. But if someone's saying to me, 90-day payment terms, we're a small business where, cash flow is king. Well, that's for any business, but certainly for us. If someone's saying 90-day terms and I'm saying, well, look, how am I supposed to do that? And once again, silence is the key. Because what you then start doing is you start getting them solving your problems for you as well. So once again, another great tactic. So think about when you get those reactions in a negotiation, particularly as you've gone through this process of understanding and driving towards interest, that you've empathized with that person, you've started to develop some tactics of way to move it forward. Think about the the neuroscientific issues that are going to be happening within your own body, okay? If you're aware of them, and I will tell you this now, know they are happening before you go in, okay? The only thing that you need to think about going into a negotiation is you are going to be surprised 100%. Okay, so just expect the surprises, and that means you can manage them, or your reaction to them, a little bit better. So what we've covered off there is mirroring. We've talked about tactical empathy, and we've talked about the impact that has in terms of how you react and respond to that from a point of view. So what I'm going to do is because there's kind of a logical flow to this, I'm going to take once again another concept from the Harvard program on negotiation, and that concept is one of anchoring. Okay, now if you've never heard of that concept before, welcome to this webinar. That's exactly why we're here. Once again, because I've got such a little amount of time to cover as much as I thought would be useful today, I'm going to briefly give you an understanding of it. Firstly, the Cambridge Dictionary has anchor, or definition of anchor as a verb, as this: to make something or someone stay in one position by fastening. Okay, so just think about that statement for a moment. Now, if I shift you towards a negotiation framework, what anchoring is basically laying down a marker where you want the deal to finish. So if we just think, and once again, I should really use a different example because everyone gets hung up on price too much, but let's just use price as a piece. If you go in and you want to get 15,000 dirhams for your deal, you go in and you anchor, you're going to anchor high. So you might go in and you say, okay, it's 25,000 dirhams. Okay. Now that's 10,000 more than you need. And what that might do to the other person goes, whoa, that's way too much. Okay. But what you've done very subtly is unconsciously, you've given them a number which is high, right? So what that's done is that shifted their expectation. If their expectation coming into that deal was 5,000 dirhams, that's a massive difference. Now, if you've gone through your processes correctly, and we'll talk about this as a sale process as well, and you've done your job correctly, they want to work with you, but you've just shifted their expectations around pricing. Now, what you'll find is that when you do the anchoring, research shows that most deals will end up closer to the first anchor that is put down than any other, because you have anchoring and counter anchoring. Now, when I run this live, I do an exercise which never fails. And I've built it to try and do this virtually. So I'm going to see if I can actually reproduce a similar result by doing this little exercise. And in order to do that, I'm going to put you into a couple of different rooms. So I think we've got, how many people have we got here? We've got 100 people. So I'm going to break us out into 2 different rooms, and there's going to be 50 people in each room. One of the rooms is going to have my colleague Ben with it, and he's going to just show you a kind of a concept and just talk to you very quickly. I'm going to take the other group. Now, at the end of that, what I'm then going to ask you to do is we're going to prompt you to go to we're going to ask you a question, okay? And that's simply all we're going to do. Now, I'll be honest, this is the first time I've ever done this virtually, so I'd be really interested to see how this plays out as well with such a large group. The results of which we'll just need a couple of minutes because Ben needs to do some ninjutsu with some of your answers, and then we'll come back to it. So look, thank you very much for doing that. The output of that, if it works, it'll make sense. If it doesn't work, I'm not going to tell you about it. But I'll tell you, a little bit about what was happening in those rooms. So look, what we did is in my room, the question that we asked was Einstein older or younger than 140 years old when he died? Okay. Now, I'm not too sure if you know this, but there isn't actually a recorded record of any human being making it to 140 years old. There are people that claim to be that old, of course, mainly, places like Tibet and places like that, but there's nothing on record. So logic kind of suggests that he wasn't 140 years old. Now, the other group, so my group, you won't know this, the question that Ben asked was Einstein older or younger than 9 years old when he died? Now, once again, you know for a fact that he was older or younger than 9 years. So if you think about the concept we were talking about, what we were doing was purely anchoring you to a larger number. Now, when I run this face-to-face, okay, I've never had it go wrong. Close, but never go wrong. What we're trying to do is to see, and when Ben looks at the results, is the average, sorry, and then we'll ask you the 2 questions. What group you were in, and how old was he when he died? What we're looking to see is if the group that I had, on average, give a larger or a higher number than the group that Ben had, okay? So the script, by the way, that I had of my facts about Einstein everything that I've read in this script has large numbers in it. Okay. So, I mean, I'll just pick out some of the highlights for some of those here. Okay. His Nobel Prize was 100 years ago. His theory on gravity came 200 years after Newton's. He published 150 scientific papers. He was an American citizen in 1940. He had a $5,000 placed on his head by the Nazi regime. There's 3,000 documents. So everything that I've given to my group in terms of my spiel, even though they know he didn't make it to 140, is high numbers. And what I'm doing is essentially, I guess, a little bit of poor NLP, but trying to upload the way that you think about that. Now, Ben's script is everything about taking that number down as low as possible. Now, even the way that Ben had his scripts written, when he said the guy's name, he didn't actually say Einstein, he said Einstein. Now, whether that gets picked up on or not is another thing. But once again, what we're doing is we're just layering the number 9 into this. He'll also tell you that he married his, he divorced his first wife in 1919. He married his second wife later that year of 1919. So everything that we talk about in Ben's script is about his early years and small numbers. So with that spiel, which I hope has bought Ben enough time, I'm curious to see if this experiment has worked. Because really, like I said, my group, hopefully, even if it's by just a couple of years, should come out a little bit higher. Ben?
Sorry, I was on mute. Quick answer is no. The reason for that is that there's a few people that actually put older or younger, so they didn't actually give a number. So I've got about 12, 13 answers that are just the number. So I can potentially have a quick look so when you say a few people, you mean like most people put older or younger? Yeah, so of the results, a few people have got numbers, but they've typed as well. So some people have put like younger than 140, 76 and stuff. But so I can't actually just do a quick sum because there's words in it as well.
All right, I'll tell you what we do then. If you can start trying to clean that data up a little bit, and we'll see if we can come back to that at the end. So look, what in negotiation practices, what anchoring does, it basically sets an expectation either high or low for the other party about where you are. So once again, I'm not necessarily looking to come out and get 25,000 dirhams for my contract or my piece of work. You know, my walkaway point, you know, that where my BATNA is, where another deal becomes favorable, might be 15,000. But if I anchor high, the chances of me finishing closer to my required or maybe over my required amount are much more highly, or the chances are higher. So really what I'm doing is I'm using, as I said, it's kind of elements of NLP and suggestion in order to help shift that person's mindset, okay? So that's something that when we run this, by the way, as a program, I would probably spend 2 hours at least just on anchoring. So please bear in mind that we've done this in about 10 minutes. And the way I've tried to do it is just to give you a demonstration of the power of anchoring, if of course it works. So look, while Ben does that, that kind of takes us into our last couple of minutes. And what I'd like to cover off is the last concept, which is really important in negotiation. And that concept is trading concessions. So while I just share my screen with you again. So a concession. What is a concession? I've had someone say, isn't that where you get popcorn from at the cinema? And yes, it is, but that's not the kind of concessions we're talking about. Concession is, you know, linked or has etymology with the word concede. So what are you giving up? Okay. Now, when we say give up, it doesn't mean that you're going, oh, I'm going to give up, I'm going to walk away, or I have to give this amount or this payment term or this product feature. It's not about that. It's about what can you give to the other side that they value. Okay. Now, in an ideal world, it would be something that you value little. Okay. So this is where we trade concessions. Here's one of the big things, and I see this when years ago I used to do a huge amount of field sales coaching. So I'd go out with salespeople and we'd go to their meetings, and then we'd have coaching sessions afterwards. And I would do that all around the UK. And the amount of times I saw this in negotiation was crazy, where concessions are just given away. Okay. Now here's the trick with negotiation: you never give anything away ever, but people do it. Okay. So people will say, yeah, we can do a 30-day payment term. Great. If that's me on the other side of the table, I'm writing that down straight away. You've just given me that. Okay, so 30 days. And when I summarize back to you, that's something you've given to me and you have got nothing in return for it. Okay, so you have to be careful with your language. So when you're talking about concessions, here's a couple of things that I want you to think about in terms of your tactics. The first thing, as I said, you never give a concession, you trade it reluctantly. Okay, reluctantly, once again, another typo. What we're looking to do here is say to that person, oh, I can do that, it's going to be difficult, I wouldn't usually do that, you know, all of these terms. And I often get you to think about, you know, the stereotypical cheesy car salesman. You know, that tactic of saying, oh, you know, I don't know if we can do this price, you know, let me go and speak to my manager. And he goes out the back and they go in and talk about the football match at the weekend because he knows he's got the authority to do that already. But when he comes out, he says, look, I spoke to my manager. He said, look, I said you're a great family. I think it's important you get this vehicle. He's agreed to do this price just one time only. All of a sudden, that family think they've got a great deal. But all the guy's done is actually just giving you a concession, but he's actually getting the deal. We can do that price if you sign today, but I'd need to do the paperwork now. So he's asking for that commitment and that trade before he does it, okay? Or it might be a question of, well, look, I tell you what I can do. I can get a brand new set of tires on this car if you can offer me or come in at this price. So he's offering that. Now, once again, if he's got a workshop out the back and he's getting his tires for trade money and he's got mechanics there that can fit it, that's something that's of little value to him. And if those tires have cost his business and the mechanic's time, let's say, you know, 1,000 dirhams for those tires, if he's getting another 2,000 dirhams on the price of the car, that's a good deal for him. But here's the thing, he's not conning that family or that buyer because that buyer's sitting there going, that's actually good value because it's going to cost me, you know, X amount of dirhams to go and get new tires on it anyway. And at least it's the hassle that I take out. I haven't got to go and find a dealer, all the rest of it. So it's not that I'm tricking anyone into doing anything. I'm genuinely giving something that they value. And how do I know that they value it? Because I've asked questions, I've mirrored them, I've used my tactical empathy, I've understood what drives their behavior. I've used all these tactics to get me to this point. So first thing, we never give a concession, you trade it reluctantly. Secondly, you optimize your concessions. So what that means is you use a statement such as, look, this is the only, I'd never do this before, okay? Or this isn't something we don't usually do. I can't offer this deal out. Look, if we can do this today, I can do this, but please, I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna get into trouble for this. Any of these kind of statements, what you're doing is you're building your concession up. It's making it seem to the other party that it's a lot of effort on your part. So if you're optimizing your concessions, guess what we do with concessions you're offered? Any ideas? You minimize them, okay? So if I'm negotiating with Ben and Ben says to me, well, look, we can come in, you know, at 10,000 dirhams. My honest reaction should that to be is like, yes, I've got a great deal. But what I'm going to say to him with a very straight face is, okay, well, I'd expect that anyway. And what that does to him, it kind of kicks him in the stomach, go, oh, I thought that was a great trade. And that's just landed with them like nothing. And what that's going to force them to do is make bigger moves, okay? Now, talking about the size of your moves, here's another thing as well. In your concessions, you make small moves. If you suddenly go, let's say, for example, let's talk about payment terms. Someone's saying 90 days and you want 30. If all of a sudden you say, look, I tell you what, we can go to 60. That's a big move. That's double from where your starting position is. What that's telling the other side is, particularly if they're a decent negotiator, that's telling them you've got room to move, still got room to move. Because certainly with your second or third offering, you're not going to move to your walkaway point, okay? So it's about small moves and trading them. So never give, trade it reluctantly. Optimize your concessions and minimize their concessions. So think about how you can use statements in terms of responding to their concessions, which makes them seem like that, okay? The last little thing I'm going to give you is a little statement for the first piece here. Never give a concession, trade it reluctantly. Get used to using this term. That's disappeared on me. Hang on one second. I got all excited then because I was building up to a key point and now I've even lost my Zoom. Oh, that's classically hidden. There we go. Okay, so when we're offering a trade, this is what we do. We use this statement, if I, and what that's going to do is going to frame what you or the other parties ask for or what you think they're going to ask for. And once again, as it says there in my box, this is what they value, okay? So if I once again, let's talk about payment terms. If I am able to, you know, if I agree to 45-day payment terms, will you, and you're making a request, okay? So that's from what you want from them. So this is once again what you value. So I'm going to trade what they value for what we value. And this is how we don't give stuff away. We don't just say, well, yeah, okay, that's fine. We'll do 45-day payment terms, or oh, we can come in at that price, or we can come in at this delivery date. What we're then doing is we're using everything at our disposal to get something that we need. So if I hit 45-day payment terms, will you commit to 10 sessions at this price? I'm then going to get a yes or no, or we're going to once again jump back into the conversation. I'm not giving away something that's important to me. Okay. Now, if it's important to them, then we're definitely going to use that to trade. So for me, you know, I'm not saying this is true, but the difference between 30-day and 45-day payment terms, you know, maybe that's something that I'm not too fussed about. But if I'm dealing with someone in procurement, my fantastic friends in procurement, if I'm dealing with them, that might be a real critical KPI for them. So if I've driven from understanding their interests, that's a driver for them, I know that's so important for them. And if I can shift it by 15 days, and I know that I can get maybe a 20% uplift on my price, or I can get 20% more volume in my deal, is that worth me giving up 15 days waiting for my money for? Possibly, but I'm not just going to give it away. If I do this, will you do this? And what that's going to give you is your concessions. Okay, this is how we offer them. So this is how we trade them. We don't just give stuff away. It's a if I will you moment. Okay, and I hope that makes sense. Sorry about the little hiccup with my slide there. So look, in summary, just before I move to one last section, these are the things that we've covered in our last two sessions. We've looked at interest oppositions, the concept of best alternative to a negotiated agreement, which is your BATNA, zone of possible agreement. We've talked about choosing your behavior based on whether you're concerned for outcome, relationship, or a combination of both. We've talked about mirroring, tactical empathy. We've talked about anchoring, and we've talked about trading concessions. So for me, you know, there's a huge amount of negotiation theory in there in kind of 2 1-hour webinars. Now, here's the thing. Are you going to go away and be able to close, you know, peacekeeping deals on the basis of what we've given you in the last couple of hours? No. What I've given you is an opportunity to be conscious of ways that you can use this moving forward. But guess what happens if you don't practice or apply it? None of this changes, okay? So anything that we've given you, for example, on Anchor, creating an empathy statement, using an empathy statement, mirroring back, and you can do that with anyone that you meet today. Even if you're living on your own, if you get shopping delivered, you can say to that guy, you know, when he delivers the shopping, you know, you seem quite stressed. What you're doing is you're labeling his emotion, right? And you can try it with anybody to see what kind of reaction you get back, okay? So look, a couple of things before we move to wrap up. There is, by the way, this isn't my last thing. I've put this in before my last thing because I'd like to actually get some feedback from people, because most people bail and we don't get some decent data. So there's one more thing that I'd like to cover off with you. And then we'll have a quick session of Q&A before we move to wrap up. And what I'd ask you to do is just go to the poll everywhere piece and just give us some feedback on here. I think there's 5 questions that we ask, and it's rating me, rating the content. What else can we do for you? Because, you know, we have a catalog or a schedule of webinars that we put together, but we'd love to know what's relevant and what's interesting to you, whether that's long-term or because of what's happening in the market at the moment. So let me just stop my share for a moment. Okay, so that will still be running in the background. In the meantime, while that's still running, what I will do is, before I lose everyone again, is just take an opportunity to...
Just while you're starting that, Russell, I have the results now, if it helps.
Oh, okay. I was going to say to you, Ben, only tell me the results if our experiment has worked.
Which would you like first?
Just what, I don't know, just tell us if it worked or not, I guess. So yeah, so the younger group, what was the number the younger group put on average?
So on average, the guys in my group put the age of 61.
Okay. And the guys and girls, of course, in my group?
75.
Yay! It worked. It worked. Okay. Now, hopefully none of you Google, because you have to do right. I think he was 76 when he died. So we've got, what's that, a 14-year difference?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a 14-year difference, and I must admit, I'm quite chuffed with that as a result. That's roughly the kind of thing that we would expect to see when we run this in a live face-to-face session as well. So what we've done there is hopefully we've influenced the way you thought, subconsciously, unconsciously. But I mean, 14 years is enough for me to take that as a victory today. So thank you very much for that, Ben, and I'm glad you called it, because it was definitely the right thing to do. Last thing is, look, we're talking about negotiation. We are in tough times, but we are all here trying to move business along. And the one thing that I don't do, and I need to do a better job of this, is kind of just sharing with you the kind of thing that we do beyond the content that we're putting out, that everyone is available to everyone, is that we've created this, what we call Lockedin Learning. It's a little play on LinkedIn Learning, so excuse the pun, but Lockedin Learning. And what we do is we create a webinar series for groups of people. So we do on one negotiation where we have a deeper dive into all of these concepts. So what we have is 3 90-minute webinars with a 30-minute intro. So you're actually getting kind of 5 hours, 5 hours, my maths is terrible, 5 hours of content. And then what we also have is, in between those, we have a linking tool that we use called Practify. And what that allows us to do is share assignments and create a social learning function. So from week to week, it's not just about coming to a webinar and then walking away. We're helping you apply that, even in these times. And that concept is based on a psychological concept called spaced repetition, which in its simplest form is teaching someone something just before they forget it. So if you come to a negotiation program, you spend 2 days learning stuff, you walk away and you don't apply it, then 85 or 86% of that information that you take on just disappears, allowing us, even in the webinar format, using the Practify journey as a link session in between, means that we can get an uplift in the way that we take that forward. Okay, so it's something that we do. We have a whole range of topics that are available on our website. Maybe Ben wants to step in and just speak to those towards the end. But before I do, does anyone have any questions on anything that we've covered today? We just ticked over an hour since I've been talking. So if there are any questions, please feel free to post them. You can open up your microphone and ask them. You can put them in the chat. And if we've got enough responses on the survey form now, I'm not too sure if they're still going, because I could go to the next one and actually even open up poll everywhere as well, but it just means the survey slide disappears. Let's do that. So if anyone's got any questions, please feel free. I'm just having a quick look at the chat here. Ben, is there any questions that have been flagged?
No, nothing that's come through specifically asking questions. So there's nothing on the chat at the moment.
Okay.
So feel free to use the chat. I'm keeping an eye on the questions on Poll Everywhere in case people are asking them on there as well. So
awesome.
Yeah, Mike.
Okay, good. Well, look, just the last piece then, because it's something that fascinates me is the neuroscience piece of any communication or linguistics training. And there's one more concept that I'll introduce you to, which is called Neuro Resonance. Neuro Resonance. And I'm going to ask you to maybe go away and do a little bit of reading and research on that yourself. It's something that we will get into if anyone wanted to take any of their organization through our kind of Lockedin Learning journey. But the Neuro Resonance is about essentially how you connect with other people. And essentially what it, once again, through brain scans, it shows that when people are connected and they are listening with empathy and responding with empathy and mirroring, there is a much greater level of connection in the brain. Literally, there is more that lights up. Now, when people aren't necessarily paying attention, or they don't like the person that's on the other side of them, or they don't feel a connection, that disappears. And when your neural resonancing drops, you get less interaction with that person, you get less feedback, you get less chance of doing a deal. So there's just one more term that I'll just throw out there, neuro resonance. Go and have a read of it if you're interested in learning a little bit more about how that can play in. And once again, it's something that you can do. You can watch two people having a conversation in a coffee shop, and you can see whether they agree on a point, whether they're in rapport, whether their relationship is new, old, burgeoning, whatever it might be. And all of that is because as a human being, you have this, okay? Primates have it as well, but it is about connection with other people. Okay, so I don't think we've got any questions coming in at the moment. So either no one is interested in what we've covered today, or we've done a great job in covering it all off. So all I'll say is, look,
Poll Everywhere Russell, sorry. We've had one that just says the poll disappeared and they haven't completed it. So I'll make sure the presentation poll is available again after we've done this one. And the other question, Russell, is will you be sharing the presentation?
Will I be sharing the presentation? I guess so. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I just need to make sure there's nothing. I can clean it up because you don't need the stuff about Zoom and stuff at the beginning. See, look, I can do, but when I'm asked that question, but I'm not too sure what the value of it is, because a lot of the way that we build our presentations are, and I'll show you, is mainly kind of imagery, right? So that is a prompt, and there's a couple of words there. So I don't mind sharing it. So the answer is yes, but what value is in it, I don't know. But yeah, I can share that with anyone that wants it. Okay, there is a question that's just coming from Jeffrey. What role does reciprocation play in trading concessions? The interesting thing about that, Jeffrey, is it's all about reciprocation. Yeah, the fact that the word trade is in there is what we're doing. We're looking to reciprocate or get reciprocation from the other party. So 100%, it's all about it. What you've got to, this is something for, just pulled my headset out. This is where I've got to be careful about not diving in and going off piece with this too much. And this is why, let's get you guys on some bigger sessions. The whole concept of fairness in a negotiation is something you've got to get out of your head. Once again, reacting to a deal, whether it's fair or not, even though you might think it's logical, it is a 100% emotional response, okay? Give me a good example. Okay, let me just give kudos to Chris Voss again. In one of his courses, he does a trade where he puts people into pairs. He gives one of those people $10, and they are the person that will make the offer. And it's simply an offer and an acceptance or denial of that offer. The other person then is to receive the offer. So they'll go into their pairs. So it might be myself and I can see Peggy there. So it might be myself and Peggy there. I have $10 and I offered Peggy. So basically what happens is I'll offer her an amount. If she accepts it, we both get to keep the amounts, okay? If she doesn't accept it, no one keeps anything. So what happens is people go in and they'll go, I'll offer you $5, right? Because guess what we do? We're human beings. We want to be nice. We want to be fair. So we go, okay, that seems fair. We'll take the split. But here's the thing. In a negotiation, if you have the money, and by the way, you can't offer zero, but if you offer anything more than $1, you're not being rational, right? You're being emotional. You're reacting to that person's emotion. Now, here's the thing. If I was to offer Peggy $1 and she knows I'm walking away with $9, what is most likely her response going to be? What? No chance. So we'll both walk away with nothing. But here's the thing. What's better, having $1 or no dollars? But it's because we're reacting to the emotional response of fairness that we're walking away from that deal. So in that example and that activity is if you walk away, if you offer anything more than $1, or if you accept, if you don't accept the dollar, what you're 100% doing is reacting to that emotionally. So to answer your question, Jeffrey, it is about reciprocation, but also you have to take away the concept of fairness. What you've got to think about to yourself is, am I doing or am I offering a trade that I can trade and I'm going to get something more in return? Okay, that's really what it's about. So reciprocation is essentially in the eye of the beholder. And I hope that makes sense, because it's how that person perceives your reciprocated offer in terms of fairness. Awesome. That's it. Look, thank you very much, everyone. I know there's still 70 people stuck around, so I'm glad you've stuck around. If you want to see this, there'll be a recording of it on YouTube, probably in the next, probably maybe Sunday, actually, thinking about workload. But really appreciate you being here. It's great to get some feedback from you as well, and I wish you all the best. Stay safe. Bye-bye.